is one of the god tiers when it comes to combo fighting game mechanics, video game type games. But how strong is the android in the game known as 2B, the main one? 2B has superhuman strength and it has swordsman melee combat skills. Not to mention, I think it's interesting how she carries her swords. It's kind of like she carries it with some sort of telekinesis because they kind of float behind her and behind her back. This game gives me the anime feels. This game's work. This is partly game mechanics, but it's also a part of the lore, how they can use different plugins to increase their different stats, raw power in general, speed, ranged attacks, how fast they heal, all this good stuff, right?
Send you the map data I collected earlier.
Yeah, they can collect map data and stuff. I'm gonna go back to this later, but when all goes to crap, they can do like detonation. They can kind of restore their consciousness in a new body. If this body becomes useless, their actual programming or personality can kind of like transfer to another body if they prepare in advance for it, obviously. 2B is physically strong enough to drive her sword into rock. These large wooden crates can push this large metal block, stuff that's way bigger than their actual size themselves. She kicked this robot through the room that far, letting you know her striking power, cracking the wall in the process. Notice how she's using that sword combat with the kick. Breaks the street beneath her, like boom! She can knock back two robots that are like her, these YoRHa, showing that she's above average android, basically fighting a whole bunch of these types when the command center was getting messed up or whatever. This large machine, she can slice through it all the way. And these machines are filled with metal too, guys. She can strike that hard. Slices through involving Eve's metal arm. Like that in the cutscene. I know these tanks in this universe aren't necessarily proven to be exactly like ours in real life, but the fact that her attacks can damage a literal tank, if we assume the tanks that to be sliced up is anything like these tanks, even though they look slightly differently, it looks like the concept is around the same premise. I mean, it looks like they're trying to model it after, even though it's different to a certain degree, you know, it's a different futuristic universe, or it looks like they were still trying to follow this concept of a tank. If that's true, that would mean that 2B can slice something apart that weighs 60 freaking tons. So that's a lot of cutting power, wouldn't you say? She can just dodge debris from giant stuff. Why would the artist even bother drawing after images if she wasn't this fast? You see what I'm saying? So it's implied she can move like a literal blur when it comes to fighting speed. She can take long falls like that and just land on her feet. The fact that she can be smacked away by these giant Goliath class stuff and she can survive or just stay conscious in general was impressive. She did get caught by an explosion of something that's super big, got hit by it, but of course survived. She has to be on these beings' level. Look at the big type of beings she be fighting. 2B will be one of those characters where she would be hard to fight. I mean, she can use small swords, hit combos with you, and even make long-range shockwave type stuff to blast you from far away, even if you are kind of far away with her sword strikes and stuff of that set. Kind of get an idea of her power and narrative and how the sword floats as you can see here, like I said earlier. Different type of weapons like this, spears and lances. One of my favorite weapons in the game when I was playing because I like boxing people up. You can see, or one could say it can fire off some type of ranged attack still, even though this is like a piece you up type of weapon, to slice you and dice you up like that. She can choose to slice you up with the little light sword first and then continue the combo later, or use larger swords to kind of hit you with way more force in the process. Skilled with spears, you can see how she uses it there. Stabby stab. These little boxing things I was telling you about, bracers they call them in the game. I mean, along with the fact that her literal sword is floating behind her back when she's holding it, she has like a little pod device that can blast you with laser blasters or rockets and stuff behind her as well. Another angle of it, you get a visual on how the attacks literally look, or they can just kind of spam at them. If she just wants to stay far away and nick damage you from far away, she can use this to like shoot platforms down, or just straight up blow a hole through a large machine in this cutscene blast laser power like that. Get an idea of how much destructive capacity she has. Building class stuff is damaged by her too, so let you know these little beams can damage building size structures. They can even support 2B's weight and kind of glide, you know? Literally has lasers, like I wasn't joking about that. Even missile launchers like that. And the weapons don't stop there. She has a long assortment of them. Even has hammers she can produce like that. A blade, like it can twirl around her for more offensive or defensive capability. Her spear, like that, comes out of the ground. And a bomb, like that. Like you see the way all that damage can be produced or put out? One could say gravity manipulation. Right here is able to do all of that, kind of keeping them in that vicinity while she just running around the place. It doesn't stop there. Like literal electricity. A wire that can kind of get you close to, like that. Wave. Like that. See all that area of effect? Can make a mirage. Like, yeah, kind of can be deceitful. She can even slow stuff down in the immediate vicinity if she's in this bubble. Some time binding magic type stuff. Like everything in the range is slowed down. Can make it into a decoy So when they attack the wrong thing, see how they fight that thing? That's the decoy, while they get lit up. And can even repair health. Don't you love it? That's the benefit of having floating things around you all the time. Protective shield. You can literally see the protection around her right there. They literally get deflected back. It's almost like offensive attack too. Shield in this occasion, that is another version of the shield, as you can see. Literally taking everything they got to offer. Talking about ultimate defense or protection, right? They even have gear that they don't always have on them at all times, like flight gear, like on some battlesuit type mech stuff. Like imagine a little android wearing a battlesuit on top of their android body that's already superhuman. Building says Goliath class stuff that can stop their attacks or pause them to some degree or endure the hit in these little battlesuit mech type things. You see how it just kind of stopped it on the spot, but then got pushed back. So it did pause it to some degree strength-wise. Here's another angle of how the flight suits actually look. So this Goliath class machine is building sized, or one could say close to small mountain size really. 2B in this state was able to halt the attack to almost a halt with the punching power, even though despite his ridiculous math, this Goliath class thing is estimated to be way over hundreds of thousands of tons, and it's totally bigger than like some ships. Despite all of this about this big thing, it didn't stop 2B from slowing it down to some degree with punches like that. You see what I mean? This flight suit is pretty fast too. I would say she's definitely supersonic, how she can like maneuver around a whole bunch of missiles, like quick turn in the middle of combat type stuff, like really quick. Like look at that, swerving through it like that. She can literally use the flight unit to smash through a big chunk of it with just raw power in general, and even use one of the arms that he took off as a weapon against this big thing to even damage this Goliath class thing even further. These flight units can take a lot of impact, like entering Earth's atmosphere with these little flight units, and was able to withstand the heat. All that heat. Shoot a barrage of missiles, obviously, like that. Can swing around like a sword. It has flight mode and then mech mode, like how you can just switch up in the middle of combat, and then you can just like do melee style stuff. That can also swing around a massive sword like this in mech mode. I'm lowballing the mess out of this being's weight, but since she was able to match the strength of a being like this, even rip piece of a big metal chunk out of this class android tank thingy apart, with her fighting power, I would say she can hit with over hundreds of thousands of tons of force. If she can at least cut with over hundreds of thousands of tons of force, at the very least. Can we just acknowledge that she actually fought the CEO of Square Enix? And oh my god, gag feats. This is goofy. The president of the CEO of Square Enix. I'm weak. Putting paws on the CEO, like basically God, basically. Like what? Has no problem defeating other machines like her, even some that be evolving and crap. Showing her competence just in general. I see it like this. There's basically two ways to look at 2B. Look at her base state and her cutting power like this, and how she can wield a multitude of weapons, a sword, or even floating pod that shoot missiles and shoot lasers at during combat on top of this. And then you got the 2B that is wearing the flight suit, which seems to increase everything about her. It's a lot of mechanized parts, so it's like enhancing her to some degree like this. I would say this is above this, but this still can hold her ground no matter what. I don't want to limit nobody, especially since we haven't seen her actual full strength. I don't believe we've seen her struggle physically to lift something. So I would say she can at least lift over hundreds of tons in this state like this. But like this, based on that feat with that Goliath class mech, she can at least lift with over hundreds of thousands of tons of force in this state. Isn't that fair? I would say that's fair, right? Just like me and you included, most folk can punch harder than what they can lift. That means if she can lift this much, she should be able to hit harder than hundreds of tons of force. And if she can lift this much, she should be able to punch even harder than this, like this. I mean, she did rip off a piece of his arm, like in the video I showed earlier. And we're not even going to talk about her black box detonation. If they just want to go full-blown kamikaze, I told you I was going to go back to this later on in the video, they can like produce a lot of freaking energy, like on some literal small nuke type stuff with that much. I wish we saw more implications of her telekinesis on how she can just hold stuff without really touching it, because even in the fight with the battlesuit, of course, she kind of implied that she doesn't need this battlesuit to pick up stuff telekinetically. Remember this part I showed earlier? Strong enough to smash the arm off, right? Then proceeds to use telekinetic ability to literally hold the arm up itself, which in itself should be heavy as heck. Look how big the arm is compared to the rest of the body. So she lifted up a big chunk of it. Not all of the arm, just a big piece of it. Still lifted a lot of weight of it up though, regardless of how you see how it's just floating and she's using it as a weapon to damage the Goliath mech even more. I would make an argument to say since she can lift up something this much bigger than her, even in her mech suit. Remember her mech suit is this big and then she's on the inside of it, so she's even smaller than this. And when you compare her actual size to how much this is, this was like maybe the size of an actual tank, so maybe close to hundreds of tons or something like that. Further concrete what I said earlier. I'd even go as far as to say she can lift up a 200-ton whale, but that's none of my business. But with detonation, she can probably level a small city or something, or even a mountain for the most part. But for the most part, that's just about what I do. Did you know 2B was this strong? Did you know she can move like a blur and like use after image type speed in combat and switch up on weapons in mid-fly, use telekinesis to lift lift up hundreds or 200s of tons. Bet you didn't know that. What do you think her limit to her cutting power is? It's funny that she's on Soul Calibur. Hey, yeah, I know. I'll see you guys in a bit though. Respect to B. But I also want to give a strong thank you to everybody that has donated to the channel. It really helps out a lot, believe it or not.